So in this segment, we're going to be talking about the nurse who cared for Boris Johnson resigning over a lack of respect for NHS workers. This is predominantly to do with pay as well as the way NHS workers are kind of spoken about and treated normally, which is horrible, to be honest, especially since it wasn't long ago we called, nurses and doctors heroes, and we're throwing them under the bus once again. So this is her here, Jenny McGee even, who kept vigil by the Prime Minister's bedside when he was sick. No, none of us would get that sort of treatment. So it does tell you how much priority was given to Boris Johnson, which of course makes sense. He's the Prime Minister, but even still, it does show you the fact that this man's life was saved by nurses and doctors, and he still refused to give them a pay rise. It shows you the kind of man Boris Johnson is. So, a nurse who cared for Boris Johnson when he was gravely ill with COVID-19 says she has handed in her resignation, such as her delusionment with the lack of respect shown by the government for the NHS and healthcare workers. Absolutely, 100% agree with her. Jenny McGee, who kept vigil by the Prime Minister's bedside for 2 days when he was in intensive care. This is a time where nurses were incredibly divided. I think it was one nurse between 12 patients. They still gave this man priority like this. He had a one-to-one nurse, or I think it was two nurses that actually looked after him. Also revealed that his staff had attempted to co-opt her into the clap for NHS. They tried to use her in a photo opportunity. That's how sick mentally Boris Johnson is. That's how sick this man is. He was going to use the nurses in photo ops, which he did. Really, he did use a lot of nurses in photo ops, but he refused to actually help them because that's what this government is obsessed with: optics, not reality. With him, and that she thought would be a discreet thank you. So sorry. They attempted to co-opt her into the clap for the NHS photo opportunity with him during a visit that she thought would be a discreet thank you visit to Downing Street. So she thought she was going to meet him, he was going to say thank you, and she would be on her way, but they tried to use her in a photo op. So she obviously read it. She's a very smart person. Beyond just being a nurse, she can actually read. Grifters and sleazy politicians, which is a skill in itself, to be honest, given how bad politicians are nowadays. She said, we're not getting the respect and now pay that we deserve. I'm just sick of it. I've handed in my resignation, said McGee, referring to the government's proposed 1% pay rise for the NHS, which unions have described as a kick in the teeth. And absolutely, I agree with them. The SNP, I think, are giving a 4 or 5% pay rise to nurses, as well as a small one-time payout, which I think is good. I think it should be higher. With the 12% pay rise, I'm not 100% sure, but nurses' wages have been stagnant over the last decade. So surely now's the time to give them a pay rise. Yes, the economy is in trouble, but the only way to actually really get the economy growing is a bottom-up approach, not a top-down approach, in terms of get money into the hands of working people, working class people, and get them to start spending. So then the economy will grow. And one of the ways you could do that is through a nurse's pay rise, and also get rid of the parking fees because they're ridiculous. So McGee made the comments in a Channel 4 documentary. Channel 4 do some great work. To be broadcast on the 24th of May, so that's already gone out, about the 15 months of COVID in Britain. If you actually do watch the documentary, let me know if it's any good, because I don't know if I'll have time. It coincides with the first anniversary when The Guardian and Daily Mirror revealed Dominic Cummings' breach of the lockdown rules. Cummings will be talking about him a lot more during the week. The documentary pinpoints the revelations as a turning point for when the resolve and sense of togetherness that had manifested in the UK through the first lockdown began to fray, because that's the point where people were like, well, clearly it's one rule for the government, government spads and ministers, etc., and a different rule for us. And that's when I think a lot of people were upset by that, especially given how the Conservative government rallied around Dominic Cummings. McGee, a lead intensive care nurse, so this one with a lot of experience within nursing. She was a lead intensive care nurse at St Thomas Hospital in London, described how she found the Prime Minister when she arrived for work. All around him there were lots of sick patients. Some of them were dying. I remember seeing him and thinking he looked very, very unwell. According to Dominic Cummings, Boris Johnson was on his deathbed. They thought he was going to die. Again, it's very hard to verify that, but I think she kind of says he was in a very bad state. He was a different colour, really. And people, that's a really a sign of bad health. So, this nurse here and all the other nurses, these are the people who would have been tasked with looking after Boris Johnson and other ministers when they got sick. It shows you how little respect the government has for NHS workers. Johnson named McGee and another nurse, Lewis Pitama, on the day he left the hospital, telling the world's media, "The reason in the end my body did start to get enough oxygen for was because for every second of the night they were watching." So why are you not giving them a pay rise, fam? Because they had to look after you. They had to watch your ugly mug all night. And, you give them a 1% pay rise. It's embarrassing. Photographs of Johnson hosting both of them in the garden of Downing Street in July were subsequently released as the NHS marked 72 years, so there's the photo up right there. McGee, who is originally from New Zealand, said she had been asked but declined to take part in the clap for carers at the event, which is, congrats to her because it was a photo op. She says, "It would have been really a photo opportunity, kind of like Boris and his NHS friends, but I wanted to stay out of it. Lots of nurses felt that the government hadn't led effectively and their indecisiveness, so many mixed messages. It was very upsetting," she said. And she's right, her job was made far more difficult, not just because of the Tory cuts that happened over the decade, but the fact that the government didn't know if there were comings or goings. They didn't know what they were doing. They tried to follow a herd immunity strategy, which didn't work and killed a lot of people. Then they went for a lockdown, which should have happened earlier. And we'll be talking about that more during the week because there's a lot more information and a lot more stories to cover with regards to this. But it does show you how much harder their lives were made because of Boris Johnson. That's all I'm saying. Yes, is quoting her again. "Yes, we have put ourselves on the line and we have worked so incredibly hard, and there's a lot of talk about how we're all heroes and all that sort of stuff. But at the same time, I'm just not sure if I can do it. I don't know how much more I've got to give to the NHS." And full respect to her, because we've needed people like her to really, step up far beyond that they've been asked to step up. Generally, the NHS during the winter is always a crisis. Because of the Conservative government. This time it was worse because you had the winter crisis, but also the second wave of the pandemic, which really hit the country hard because of this idiot Boris Johnson's lack of preparedness. He didn't learn from the first one, and that's something we'll be talking a bit more about during the week. McGee recalled the situation leading up to Christmas last year, a period when the government was coming under heavy criticism for not acting sooner to impose restrictions. She described what took shape in their hospitals as cesspool of COVID. This time there was more than the first surge. The nurses are stretched even more. An absolute S-show, to be honest. At that point, I don't know how to describe the horrendousness of what we were going through. We were desperate, and you've got to think that the impact of just seeing that amount of people dying around you, you can get severe amounts of PTSD from that amount of death and pain. Having to tell family members that their loved one has passed. That's a really difficult job. Research carried out last year by the Royal College of Nursing showed a sharp rise in the proportion of nursing staff considering quitting the profession, driven primarily by concerns about pay. Nearly 3/4, 73% of the 42,000 members who responded to the survey across the UK said higher pay would make them feel more valued. And that's what this is about, making NHS staff feel valued. Because if they don't feel valued, then chances are they're going to leave, because this is an incredibly hard job already. If you don't feel valued in your job, then chances are you might leave, especially given the fact that it is a qualification to become a nurse. There are opportunities in other countries to leave and, become a nurse there. There might be more promotional opportunities as well. So this idea that, these people are going to stay because, this is their job and this is the only thing that they may be qualified to do is just wrong, because, other developed countries are looking for NHS workers, and it mentions in this article that she's got a contract to work in the Caribbean. Chances are we're going to see a lot more NHS staff leave and go to various different countries where they'll be paid more, they'll be less stressed, less overworked, and probably will have a better quality of life. Across the NHS and independent sectors, the percentage thinking of leaving the profession increased to 36%. That's more than a third from 27% at the end of 2019. So you're talking about generally a quarter of nurses, a quarter of, I think that's NHS workers generally think about leaving, over a quarter of them. That's over a third now. That's a lot of people that if these people did decide to leave, we're going to struggle far more than we are now. And we're not doing great as is. The winter every year is bad in this country. Of those thinking of leaving, 61% cited pay as a factor. So all they have to do is give the NHS staff a higher pay rise, right? A decent one, maybe not 12%, maybe 6 or 7%, right? And for the most part, they'll probably be happier. That's all they have to do, and they refuse to do it. Other factors cited including the way nursing staff have been treated during the pandemic. Again, that's something the government could easily fix. Low staffing levels, that's more difficult to fix because that means increasing the NHS budget massively and making training far more accessible financially. Keeping the nurses bursary and making sure that the people who go to nursing don't have things like student debt and excessive bills. I think that's the best way to do it. And a lack of management support. That's something where the government may struggle to fix that, but as kind of staffing increases, that would help kind of lower the strain on management. Pat Cullen, the acting general and chief of the Royal College of Nursing, said nursing staff are extremely exhausted and burnt out after a punishing year of tackling the COVID pandemic. I can imagine that is the case. To hear the government's proposed 1% pay rise is an insult and shows how little the government listens to and respects nursing staff who have been putting their lives on the line. Absolutely, the government really don't care, and I don't think it's too crazy to think that the government actively do want to get rid of the NHS, and by doing stuff like this, by running it down constantly, this is their attempt to privatise it. They're playing the long game to privatise the NHS. At the same time, there continued to be a steady increase in the number of people from the UK within the UK applying to become nurses, accompanied by continued growth of new recruits coming from other parts of the world, such as India and the Philippines. But established nurses from the EU have been leaving the UK, and it's far harder to learn English as a language. If you come from countries that are further outside of Europe, the written structure and the way it's spoken is very different. So it takes a lot more time to understand English for people that are not from the EU. It's not a dig at anyone from sort of Asia, specifically the Indian subcontinent and these sorts of areas. It can be quite difficult to learn English as a language compared to if you're from Europe or other more English speaking parts of the world. Since 2019 referendum on the UK's membership of the EU, there was a steep 89% of decline in the number of European Economic Area nurses entering and registering in the UK. That's not a surprise because of Brexit and the general kind of feeling that foreigners aren't wanted in the UK. That's not a shock to anyone. Starmer said on Twitter that McGee's comments were a devastating indictment of Boris Johnson's approach to the people who put their lives on the line for the country. But, Starmer had asked how much does he propose to pay nurses and what is he going to do to help recruit more nurses into the system to help the already existing staffing shortage. What are you going to do to solve that, big man? Crickets. McGee said, after the toughest year of my nursing career, I'm taking a step back from the NHS but hope to return in the future. I'm excited to start a new nursing contract in the Caribbean before a holiday back home in New Zealand this year, and I hope that she manages to recover, all the nurses manage to recover from the kind of stress and torment they were put through by the pandemic, but also from the government. She said, I'm so proud to have worked at St. Thomas Hospital and to have been a part of such a fantastic team. A Downing Street spokesperson said, NHS staff have gone above and beyond over the past year, and this government would, again, I'm not going to read this. This is a load of rubbish, this statement. If you're going to help them, because they've gone above and beyond what they've normally been asked to do, then give them a proper pay rise, you idiots. You talk about how the nurses have been exempt from the public sector pay rise, but the simple fact is there shouldn't be pay freezes right now. You need more money to be pumped into the economy to help growth actually happen. At the same time, we've invested 30 million to support staff mental health. I wonder if you divide this up between all of the hospitals and all the NHS staff, that's peanuts. That's absolute peanuts. It's a load of rubbish, this entire statement here. But yeah, what can we learn from this segment is that, a lot of nurses are going to leave, and some of them are already leaving because they've gotten a better offer. Some of them might leave the sector completely. We don't know, but what we do know is Boris Johnson loves a photo op. We see from this here, I'm delighted to welcome NHS staff from across the UK to Downing Street yesterday. I know how tough the pandemic has been for NHS, then pay them the money. Show me the money, or show them the money in this case. He's got that big right hand cock to punch the NHS down. And all he can do is give them a clap and a thumb up because he's not going to give them a pay rise. This is a man who struggles to live on a prime ministerial salary of 150,000, and he will never have to put up with as much as a nurse does in a month than he does in a year. But anyways, look, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.